Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my video for Vertical Golden Ox. Golden Ox is a really interesting trait in that you sacrifice a lot of board strength in order to get future board strength in the form of gold drops and sometimes components at the 6th breakpoint. So when you have 6 Golden Ox in, normally this will be in stage 4, you're killing about 8 units if you win the round. You'll get about 1/2 a component per round on average, as well as 8 gold. If you have 4 Golden Ox in, you'll get about like 5 gold per round on average, assuming you win the round. Now this is really important because with Golden Ox, you're a ton of the value of your investment is in that scaling power. So you are actually a lot weaker pound for pound than your opponents until you start scaling. So it's very, very important to spike at different times than the rest of the lobby because if your board is worth the same amount of gold as someone else's board, you will lose to them because, of course, you're invested in this kind of future scaling. However, if you are able to spike ahead of the rest of the lobby and win rounds with the Golden Ox trade in with 6 Golden Ox, hopefully, you're getting you're getting 8 gold around a full item every stage roughly, uh, and you can use that to kind of snowball into a victory. So if you get 6 Golden Ox in a 4-1, for example, and you win every round, that's going to be about 40 gold and a full item that you can use to go level 9 and continue winning in stage 5. That's normally going to be the tempo required for Golden Ox. You normally have to win stage 4. Just because when stage 5 comes around, if you haven't already started cashing out a lot of your power, you are going to struggle against boards who are not investing so many of their units in the scaling trait. Early game for Golden Ox, I think let's work backwards. Your main carry on Golden Ox is going to be Annie. Let's just go ahead and put all the units up here. Viego is pretty unreliable, so this line is a lot stronger with a Golden Ox Emblem. I generally would not try to play it without the emblem, except under very, very specific circumstances. Because you can't necessarily find Viego, and the spike from 5 to 6 is a really big difference. That's when you're able to farm that half a component per round on average and actually get board strength. Because just by getting more gold, even if you 2-star your entire board, it's kind of hard to get even stronger. You do scale the damage amp on Golden Ox, but even still, when you have 6 Golden Ox in, you can get up to maybe like triple of what the value shows. Not just for 6, for any amount of Golden Ox, the damage amp, you can get up to about triple of what it shows. But even at that point, it's still not going to be as effective as playing a normal trait, but hopefully, again, you will have outscaled your opponents by getting extra rewards. So basically, with these Golden Ox units, you're generally going to want to play around the 4 costs between Aphelios and Annie. Annie is a lot stronger than Aphelios on current patch, so prioritize itemizing her. Uh, Different than the Strategist Amp board that featured Annie as kind of one of its most important units at the start of the set. This board actually tends to have a lot of frontline. You'll often want to play a Bruiser with Alistar and a Vanguard with Jarvan. That's at least so far what the high elo community has kind of decided the strongest version of this board is. There may be developments in the future, but so far, we really want a Vanguard for Jarvan. He's just a really strong unit. Leona is not super contested at the time of this video being posted. So you can usually get a pretty good frontline here, and because you already have half a Bruiser with Alistar, a lot of times you're going to want another Bruiser. Gragas is going to be good to give Divinicore to your entire team. If you do have Viego, Mordekaiser is going to be good to give Techie to Viego. But basically, because your board will look something like this, you actually have a lot of frontline and not that much backline. So Archangels is actually going to be Annie's best item in this setup. You don't necessarily need it, but it is her best item, and if you don't have it, I would think some form of AP is really important. Annie doesn't have any ability power from any sources at all. So ability power is just the best form of scaling. Just for example, if you look at a damage amp item like Giant Slayer, it's giving you 25% total damage amp against a giant. But going from 0 to 50 AP with an item like Death Cap, I know this has amp on it, but the 50 ability power is just straight up 50% extra damage. It's just 50% extra damage when you go from 100 to 150. So having AP on Annie is really important. The best one of these is Archangels, just because you do have a lot of frontline, fight should last a while. And then because she's 40 mana, mana items are still really important on her. Blue buff is going to be your absolute best mana item. If you are unable to get it, just because you're looking at 3 tiers right here, that's already kind of hard to get. Shojin's completely fine. And then mixing an attack speed item is often pretty good. Natchers is going to be good here. Like even attack speed items like Guard Breaker will be fine. You can either go double mana, something like this is good as well. Basically, you want a source of ability power as well as ways to make her cast more. So ideally, I think probably a build like this is pretty close to optimal. But yeah, she's gonna be your most important unit, so prioritize Annie items. In the early game, Morgana can hold blue buff. Veigar can hold blue buff. These are also just good Shojin holders as well. And if you do make Shojin early, just because it's a lot more flexible, you can also you use a Techie, Zyra, Seraphine. In the mid game, you can use Jinx, Varus, Yumi. Yumi's a great blue buff holder. You can use Elise as well. These are all kind of like Shojin holders you can use in the meantime. But yeah, Yumi is only 30 mana, so if you do have blue buff, you could go with her. If you miss Annie, you can also go with Vex as kind of your backup. I recently made the guide for Vex Exotech, so you can kind of flex between these two lines with blue buff sometimes. But anyway, yeah. Prioritize your Annie items. Aphelios is kind of your secondary carry. He really wants Rageblade. One Rageblade is extremely, extremely important on him. Other than that, just any AD items are fine. Infinity Edge is going to be your second best item, but you don't have to go too out of your way to get it. Damage Amp. I know I mentioned Guardbreaker earlier. Actually, Damage Amp is not that good because Golden Ox gives you so much Damage Amp already. They get a lot of diminishing returns. So sorry, I know I said Guardbreaker earlier, but actually not that good. You want to avoid Damage Amp items like Giant Slayer and Guardbreaker because you're already getting so much. So like Hurricane, Deathblade, Last Whisperer, like these are all going to be pretty good. Again, this line is a lot better with a Golden Ox Emblem. I personally would almost never play it without having the emblem pretty early on, just because you can't guarantee finding Viego. And if you don't have Viego and you roll down at level 8 and you basically hit this board, let's say you also hit like Aesah as well to give marksman to Aphelios. Even if you hit this board like fully upgraded, you're actually going to struggle against just other 4-cost boards. I guess here you could also not play the Graves. There's a few things you could play. Just Yumi would give you 2 traits. I think neither of these traits are super impactful. Annie doesn't benefit that much from Amp. Emma Squad is not super impactful. Um, but yeah, you could play a few things. You could just play like a good unit like a Zac or like an Aurora. But yeah, basically, even if you kind of hit this full board without 6 Ox, the line is actually pretty weak. So it's just really unreliable. You're never really guaranteed to hit Viego. So I'd always try to play it with the emblem, and that way you don't need Viego. You can play this board on level 8, have 6 Ox, and then when you find Viego, you can just replace Graves whenever. You don't have to have Xayah here, but she's a pretty good addition, especially with the emblem, just because she'll give marksman with Aphelios, and because you're going to be spending a lot of gold on level 8, you're going to be able to hit a lot of 2-star forecasts. Xayah is pretty uncontested as well right now, so you might be able to itemize her. And yeah, she's just like one of the best forecasts that slots into this build. It doesn't have to be exactly Xayah, but she just kind of fits in and is usually not too hard to find. As opposed to some other units like Zeri, for example, won't have either traits, but you could also use like Zed. Zed will get Slayer um, with the emblem. is also a pretty good option. So the way Golden Ox works, you will get a tree where it will take more gold spent each proc, and you can't proc it more than once per turn. The first proc will be 8 gold. Rerolls count double, so you could either pump levels twice or reroll twice, which will only be spending 4 gold, but again, since it counts double, 4 gold will count as 8 gold for proccing the tree. I generally, if you think you might end up playing Golden Ox, again, I generally wouldn't recommend it without the emblem, but you should look for ways to efficiently proc this. So, for example, as early as stage 2-1, if you have just a board that looks something like this, maybe you have like an emblem as well, something simple like this. One spot you might proc it is, for example, when you're leveling to level 7. A lot of times you can do it over the course of 2 different rounds while losing very little econ, either 1 gold or 0 gold. You could also do it when leveling to 6 as well, depending on how rich you are. Generally, you don't want to lose more than 1 gold while proccing the tree. It's also very common to do it while leveling to 8. Oftentimes with this line, again, you're really going to want to spike at different times as your opponents. So most frequently, this is when you can spike on 4-1 by hitting a lot more 2-stars due to whatever setup you have. Econ is really good here. Cypher into Golden Ox is also extremely strong because you can cash out, spend all your gold, and be extremely strong on 4-1, and then kind of snowball that cash out more and more. But basically, like, let's just say, for example, on Wolves, round 3-7, you're level 7 with 80 gold, you could just pump 20 gold or however much you need to get the next proc of your Golden Ox tree, and you'll just be 20 out of 48 to the next level, and then next level you just finish leveling, so you'll kind of get a free proc there. Other than that, you'll usually want to continue rolling on level 8 until you have most of your upgrades, definitely all of your important upgrades. Like if you had a 3-item Annie, I would never try to go 9 without 2-starring her, and you should try to time your rolls so that you can always get a proc of the Golden Ox tree whenever you do roll in a round. So for example, if you start a round with only 10 gold, but you think you want to roll, I might want to just wait until next round until you have more money and you're able to advance your Golden Ox tree, because that will give you more damage amp. And by the end of the game, you should be trying to get about triple the damage amp of the tier you reach. And ideally, this is 6 with the emblem. With emblem, you don't need to find Viego. Without the emblem, this line is a lot more risky, but if you are able to find Viego, then it will be strong. Viego himself is an extremely important unit in this line. He's just really strong. Edge of Night is going to be really good just to keep him alive. He does have some built-in survivability, but it's just not quite enough. So yeah, Edge of Night is great. Viego oftentimes will jump into the enemy backline. So if your opponent has a strong range carry, so let's just say they have like a very whatever unit it starts attacking. So let's just say it starts attacking your Alistar. By the time your Alistar dies, Viego will have jumped in here, so he's almost always going to be the second unit targeted. So because of that, Edge of Night is really good. Other than that, just raw AP is good on him. He does have a little bit of techie if you play Mordekaiser, but in general, he's not going to have that much AP. He's going to have a lot of damage amp. And Lifesteal is also going to be effective as well. So something like this is going to be great on Viego. Once you start getting the Golden Ox cash outs, normally you are going to want to go level 9, and if you are able to find Viego too, you can usually kind of snowball that into a victory. Another thing you can actually go for with this Golden Ox build is 3-star 4 cost instead of going level 10. I generally think that's recommended, especially if you find a Zac, because going level 10 costs 80 gold, which is 40 rolls, and in 40 rolls you can find a lot of Zac blobs as well as get double the value for your Golden Ox tree. So basically, if you have if I can find Annie. And then maybe you have a board that looks something like this. Usually +1 Vanguard, oftentimes it's Leona. It doesn't have to be exactly Leona, but she's just a good unit that's pretty easy to 2-star and a really good frontliner. So if you do end up with a board like this, I would not go level 10 at all. I would just be rolling at level 9, especially if you're collecting Zac blobs, but you're also scaling your tree. And because you're actually taking a lot of 4 costs out of the pool just by yourself, and you tend to have a lot of excess gold, you can actually hold extra copies of all of these units and go for a 3-star 4 cost. It's I find it pretty common if you survive to stage 6 while playing 6 Golden Ox that you it's probably about like 50-50 that you can hit a 3-star 4 cost by then. A lot of times you'll just collect copies of all of these, and if you're really close to one of them, let's say you have 7 Leonas, 5 Annies, 5 Xayahs, and like 7 Aphelios, you can like sell off your extra Annies and Xayahs and kind of dig for the other two. A lot of times, if you're like 1 life and you're about to die, let's say you sell them off and you roll and you hit like 1 more Aphelios, and now you have 8. You can sell off your 4 extra Leonas. That's 8 more gold, or sorry, 8 more rolls, 16 more gold, to kind of look for your units. So definitely one thing to keep in mind is going for 3-star 4 cost with this line as well. Frontline items, I didn't talk about too much, but you can just use kind of generic frontline items. Prioritize your Annie items the most. Once you have your Annie items, Rageblade plus kind of whatever else on Aphelios. I would not build Viego items unless you know for sure you have a Viego. It's just too inconsistent to hit this unit. If you're in a spot where you can consistently hit Viego and get away with playing Golden Ox, like you pretty much already won the game, so definitely don't plan to be in that spot. That's going to wrap it up on this video for Golden Ox. If you have any questions, let me know in the Discord, and thanks for watching.